If you want to understand the exact moment my soul curdled, you have to understand the geography of Oak Creek. This isn't a neighborhood. It's a psychological experiment funded by people who think beige is a personality trait. It's the kind of place where the grass is measured with rulers, the trash cans are hidden behind mandatory trellis screens, and the silence is so heavy it feels like a physical weight pressing against your eardrums. We don't have neighbors here. We have co-residents. We have surveillance targets. We have enemies who smile and wave while mentally calculating if your hedges are 3 inches over the regulation height. I'm a simple man. I work in logistics. I spend 40 hours a week staring at spreadsheets that track shipping containers from Shenzhen to Long Beach. My life is defined by order. Item A goes to location B. If item A does not arrive at location B, the world has failed. It is a binary existence. It keeps me sane. Or it did until the Tuesday of the graphics card. I had been planning this build for 3 years. 3 years of using a computer that sounded like a jet engine trying to achieve takeoff every time I opened a second Chrome tab. I had saved. I had scraped. I had eaten ramen noodles and skipped happy hours. And finally, I had pulled the trigger. An NVIDIA RTX 4090. The beast. The monolith. A slab of technology so advanced it probably had its own consciousness. It cost $1,600. That's not a purchase. That's a financial event. That's a call your bank beforehand so they don't freeze your assets transaction. I was working from home that Tuesday, specifically so I could intercept the package. I sat at my desk, which faces the street, but I had the blinds drawn because the sun glares off my monitor. I had the Amazon tracking map open on my second screen. It's a sickness, isn't it? Watching that little blue dot crawl through the suburbs. Your driver, Kevin, is 8 stops away, went to the kitchen to make coffee. I ground the beans. I poured the water. I was vibrating with that specific nerd anxiety that comes when expensive electronics are in transit. Your driver, Kevin, is 4 stops away. I went to the bathroom. A fatal error. A tactical blunder of historic proportions. I was in there for maybe 4 minutes. 5 tops. I was washing my hands when my phone buzzed on the granite vanity. A single, cheerful vibration. Ding. Notification. Delivered. Your package was left near the front door or porch. The dopamine hit was immediate. I dried my hands on a towel that my wife, Sarah, insists is decorative only, and I jogged to the front door. I didn't walk, I jogged. I unlocked the deadbolt, threw open the door, and prepared to hoist the heavy, cardboard-encased joy into my arms. Air. Just air. And sunlight. And the smell of fresh mulch from the landscaping crew 3 doors down. The porch was empty. My brain didn't process it at first. It rejected the visual data. I looked down at the welcome mat. It says welcome in a font that suggests we are fun people. We are clearly not fun people. The mat was bare. I looked behind the potted fern. Nothing. I looked over the railing into the bushes. Nothing. I stepped out onto the concrete in my socks. I looked up and down the street. It was empty. Just the gentle sway of oak trees and the distant hum of a lawn mower. "Kevin?" I whispered to the universe. I pulled my phone out. I refreshed the app. Delivered. There was a photo. Proof of delivery. I stared at the screen. The photo showed the box. my box. The distinct Amazon Smile logo on the side. It was sitting right there, on the welcome mat, exactly where my feet were currently standing. The timestamp on the photo was 2:14 p.m. It was currently 2:17 p.m. 3 minutes. In the 3 minutes it took me to use the restroom and wash my hands, $1,600 had evaporated. I didn't panic. Not yet. Panic is for amateurs. I went into crisis management mode. I turned around and went back inside. I went straight to my office and pulled up the Ring interface on my desktop. I have a doorbell camera. I bought it because Sarah was worried about safety. I thought it was paranoid. Today, it was the black box recorder of my personal plane crash. I clicked Live View. Empty porch. I clicked History. There it was. Motion detected. 2:14 p.m. I clicked play. I watched Kevin, the driver. Good man. He walks up, places the box gently. He actually handled it with care, bless him. Snaps the photo and walks back to his van. He drives away. The timeline scrolled forward. The porch was empty. A bird flew past. A squirrel ran across the railing. Motion detected. 2:15 p.m. The video buffered for a second, a spinning white circle of doom, and then it resolved, entering from the left side of the frame. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a teenager in a hoodie. It wasn't a faceless porch pirate in a beat-up sedan idling at the curb. It was Brenda. Brenda lives directly across the street. Brenda is the president of the HOA Beautification Committee. Brenda is a woman who once left a note on my windshield telling me that my car was too dusty and it was affecting the neighborhood aesthetic. Brenda is shaped like a bell pepper and moves with the terrifying, inexorable confidence of a tank. I watched, frozen, as she walked up my driveway. She wasn't sneaking. She wasn't looking over her shoulder. She was power walking. She wore her signature outfit, capri pants that defied the laws of tensile strength, a floral blouse that looked like a sofa from 1994, and a visor. She marched right up the steps. The camera lens is wide angle, so her face distorted as she got close, her nose becoming a bulbous mass of entitlement. She looked down at the box. She didn't read the label. She didn't check the name. She bent down, a squat that was surprisingly athletic for a woman who claims she can't rake her own leaves, and scooped it up. She tucked the RTX 4090 under her arm like a clutch purse, and then she turned around and walked away. I watched her traverse the distance of my driveway, cross the asphalt of the street, walk up her own driveway, and disappear into her front door. The video ended. I sat there in my office chair. The silence in the house was absolute. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear my own blood pounding in my ears. It wasn't just theft. It was the casualness of it, the absolute lack of fear. She stole from me in broad daylight, under a camera she knew was there, while living 30 yards away. It was a power move. It was a declaration of war. I saved the video. I downloaded it to my hard drive. I emailed it to myself. I texted it to Sarah with the caption, "You are not going to believe this." Then I put my shoes on. I didn't call the police immediately. That was my mistake. I still believed in the social contract. I believed that surely this was a misunderstanding. Maybe she saw the box and thought, "Oh no, porch pirates. I'll keep this safe for Jack until he gets home." Yes, that had to be it. Brenda was just being a good neighbor. A zealously intrusive, boundary-stomping good neighbor. I walked out my front door. The air was crisp. It was a beautiful day, which felt insulting. I crossed the street. My heart was hammering, not from fear, but from the awkwardness of the interaction I was about to initiate. I rehearsed my lines. "Hey, Brenda. Thanks for grabbing that. I was actually home. Haha, silly me." I reached her front door. It was painted a color called soft lamb's ear, which is just gray for people who want to charge you more money. There was a wreath made of dried twigs that looked like a fire hazard. I rang the bell. Somewhere deep inside the house, a small dog began to scream. It wasn't a bark. It was a high-pitched sonic weapon. I heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. The peephole darkened. She was looking at me. I put on my best friendly neighbor face. I smiled. I looked non-threatening. The lock clicked. The door opened about 6 inches. Brenda stood there. She was holding a glass of iced tea. She looked at me with eyes that were flat and dead, like a shark that had lost interest in eating you, but might bite you anyway just to see what you taste like. "Jack," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. "Hey, Brenda," I said. "How are you doing?" "I'm busy," she said. "I'm reorganizing my pantry. The humidity is making my flour clump." "Right," I said. "Sorry to disturb the flour. Hey, I just got a notification that a package was delivered to my house a few minutes ago. I went to grab it, but it was gone." I paused. I left the space there for her to fill. This was her moment. This was where she said, "Oh, Jack! Yes, I grabbed it. Here you go." Brenda took a sip of her tea. The ice cubes clinked. "That's unfortunate," she said. "The crime in this city is getting out of hand. I've told the board we need a gate. Nobody listens to me." My smile faltered. "Right. Well, the thing is, I checked my doorbell camera." Her eyes didn't flicker. "Oh?" "Yeah. And the camera shows you walking up to my porch, picking up the box, and bringing it over here. About 10 minutes ago." The silence that followed stretched out for an eternity. A bee buzzed past us. The dog inside the house let out another piercing yelp. Brenda sighed. It was the sigh of a schoolteacher explaining subtraction to a particularly dense toddler. "Jack, I don't know what you think you saw, but I haven't left my house all afternoon." I blinked. What?" "I've been in the pantry," she repeated. "Like I said." "Brenda," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I have you on video. 4K video. I can see the floral print shirt you're wearing right now. I can see the box. I watched you walk into this house with it." She looked down at her shirt, then back at me. "Lots of people. I have this shirt. It's from Kohl's. It's very popular." "It's you, Brenda! You live across the street! I watched you walk out of this door and back into this door." "I think you are confused," she said, her voice turning frosty. "And frankly, I think you're being very aggressive. You're standing on my property accusing me of theft? That's defamation, Jack. I could sue you for that." My brain was short-circuiting. This was gaslighting on an Olympic level. This was gold medal world record denial. "I'm not accusing you," I stammered, trying to hold on to reality. "I'm telling you what is on the video. I just want the box back. It's computer parts. It's expensive. Please just give it to me, and we can pretend this never happened." "I don't have your box," she said. She started to close the door. I instinctively put my hand out, not touching the door, but into the space. "Brenda, don't do this. I'm going to have to call the police." She stopped. She opened the door back up, just an inch, and looked at me with a sneer that revealed a smear of pink lipstick on her front tooth. Call them, she hissed. Go ahead. Call the police on a 60-year-old woman because you lost your toy. See what happens. I've lived here for 20 years, Jack. I know the chief of police. We play bridge on Thursdays. I have video evidence, I shouted, abandoning all pretense of politeness. Maybe the wind took it, she said. The wind? It weighs 5 pounds. We live in a wind corridor, she said, deadpan. Now get off my porch before I call 911 and tell them a strange man is threatening me. Slam. The door shut in my face. The deadbolt slid home with a heavy, final thunk. I stood there. I stared at the wood grain. I could hear her moving inside. I heard the distinct sound of a television turning on. I walked back down her driveway. My hands were shaking. I was so angry I could taste copper in my mouth. I looked back at her house. The curtains in the living room twitched. She was watching me. She was in there, with my property, probably cutting it open with her kitchen shears right now. I went back to my house. I sat on my couch. I dialed the non-emergency line. Police dispatch? I'd like to report a theft, I said. My voice sounded calm, which was a miracle because internally I was screaming. My neighbor stole a package off my porch. I have it on video. Name and address? I gave them the info. An officer will be out when one becomes available. It's a busy afternoon. I'll wait, I said. I waited 4 hours. The sun went down. The street lights flickered on, amber sodium lights that made the whole neighborhood look sickly. I sat by the window, watching Brenda's house. I saw the blue flicker of her TV. She was in there, relaxing, enjoying her evening. While I sat here, $1,600 poorer, stewing in my own juices. Around 7:30 p.m., a cruiser rolled up. No lights, no sirens, just a tired Ford Explorer. Officer Miller. I knew Miller vaguely. He was a guy who looked like he'd been 5 years away from retirement for the last 15 years. He walked up my driveway, hitching up his belt. I met him outside. I didn't want him to ring the bell and wake up the baby. If we had a baby. We didn't, but I didn't want him to ring it anyway. It felt too official. Jack, Miller said. He looked exhausted. Coffee stain on his shirt. Officer Miller, thanks for coming. What's the beef? He asked, looking across the street. Brenda, I said. She stole a package, high-value electronics. I have the video. I held out my phone. Miller didn't even take it. He just leaned in and watched the screen. He watched Brenda waddle up. He watched Brenda steal. He watched Brenda waddle away. He let out a long, low whistle. Yeah, that's pretty clear. Right? I said, feeling a surge of vindication. So, let's go get it. Miller sighed. He rubbed the back of his neck. Here's the thing, Jack. I can go over there. I can knock. I can ask her to give it back. But if she doesn't answer, or if she denies it, I can't kick the door down. Why not? I demanded. You just saw the crime. It's right there. It's a misdemeanor theft, technically, unless the value is over a certain amount. It's $1,600, I practically screamed. That's felony larceny in this state. Miller raised an eyebrow. Is it? What was in the box? A graphics card. Miller looked blank. For a computer? Yes. A computer part costs $1,600? He looked skeptical. Does it fly the computer to the moon? It's top of the line. Look, the value makes it a felony. You have probable cause. She's in there right now. Okay, Miller said, putting his hands up. Calm down. Let's go talk to her. We walked across the street. The dynamic was different this time. I had the badge with me. I had the gun. Well, the guy with the gun. I felt powerful. Miller knocked on the soft lamb's ear door. Bang, bang, bang. "Police department! Brenda! Open up!" Silence. The dog didn't even bark this time. She had probably put it in the back room. The TV was off. The house was dark. "I know she's in there," I said. "I saw the TV light 5 minutes ago." Miller knocked again. "Brenda, we need to talk about the package." Nothing. We stood there for 2 minutes. Miller shone his flashlight into the front window. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the beige sofa, the glass coffee table, the floral curtains. No box. No Brenda. "She hid it," I said. Miller clicked his flashlight off. "She's not answering, Jack. So break the door." "I am not breaking down a door for a property dispute based on a Ring video," Miller said firmly. "I can't do it. Fourth Amendment. I need a warrant. And to get a warrant, I need a judge. And a judge isn't going to sign a warrant for a porch pirate case at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. It's just not happening." "So she wins?" I stared at him, incredulous. "She just gets away with it because she won't open the door?" "For tonight?" "Yeah," Miller said. "I'll write a report. You take that report number, you go to the courthouse, you file in small claims. Or you file a formal criminal complaint and a detective might follow up in a few weeks. But honestly, unless we find the item in her possession, she's going to claim she never took it, or she thought it was trash, or she lost it. And without the physical evidence, it's her word against a video that a defense attorney will tear apart." "How can you tear apart a video of her stealing it?" "She could say she was protecting it from the wind," Miller said. I felt my soul leave my body. "That's exactly what she said." Miller chuckled darkly. "Yeah, they all say that. Look, Jack, my advice, get a P.O. box or an Amazon locker. These people, they don't stop. And the law isn't built to fix neighbor feuds." Miller handed me a card with a case number scribbled on it. "Sorry, buddy." He walked back to his cruiser. I stood on the sidewalk, alone in the dark. I looked at Brenda's house. A single light flicked on in the upstairs bedroom. She was going to bed. She was going to sleep the sleep of the just, untroubled by conscience, with my RTX 4090 probably sitting on her dresser, serving as a coaster for her dentures. Small claims court, months of paperwork, mediation. She'd probably countersue for harassment. I walked back to my house. I didn't go to bed. I went to the garage. I sat on a stool and stared at my workbench. I looked at my tools. I looked at a pile of scrap cardboard in the recycling bin. The law had failed. Civility had failed. Reason had failed. Brenda didn't want to play by the rules of society. She wanted to play by the rules of the jungle. Take what you can. Hide. Deny. Fine. If she wanted a package so badly, I was going to give her one. I wasn't going to give her electronics. I wasn't going to give her a lawsuit. I was going to give her a nightmare. I pulled out my laptop and typed 2 words into the search bar. Bulk crickets. The war had begun. The morning after the theft, I woke up with a sensation that can only be described as a justice hangover. You know the feeling. It's a gnawing, acidic tightness in your chest that has nothing to do with alcohol and everything to do with the realization that the world is fundamentally broken. I lay in bed, staring at the popcorn ceiling, and the first thought that entered my brain was, she has it. She has the RTX 4090. I imagined Brenda waking up in her soft lamb's ear fortress. I imagined her shuffling into her kitchen, pouring herself a cup of weak coffee, and looking at the box on her counter. Did she open it? Did she realize she had stolen a piece of high-performance computing architecture capable of rendering 8K video in real time? Or did she think it was a very fancy, very heavy, cutting board? I rolled out of bed. I was not a man who gave up. I was a man who optimized logistics chains. I fixed problems. Officer Miller had been a roadblock, sure, but Officer Miller was just one man in a flawed system. There were other avenues. There were other levers of power in suburbia. I showered, dressed in my business casual but ready for war attire, polo shirt, chinos, and went downstairs. I brewed a pot of coffee that was strong enough to strip paint, and I sat down at my kitchen table. It was time to call the Homeowners Association. Now, let me explain the Oak Creek HOA. They are an organization that operates with the ruthlessness of the KGB, but the aesthetic of a Pottery Barn catalog. They once fined me $50 because my garden hose was coiled in a counterclockwise direction, which apparently violated Section 7, Paragraph C of the Community Guidelines regarding visual harmony. If they cared that much about hose direction, surely they would care about a board member committing grand larceny against a resident. I pulled up the management company's number. I dialed. I was put on hold. The hold music was a smooth jazz saxophone cover of Despacito, which felt appropriate for the slow, agonizing death of my hope. Oak Creek Management, this is Sharon, a voice chirped. Sharon sounded like she smiled with too many teeth. Hi, Sharon, I said, keeping my voice level. My name is Jack Miller. I live at 404 Maple Drive. I need to file a formal grievance against a neighbor. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Sharon said, her voice dripping with artificial empathy. Is it about trash cans? It's usually trash cans on Wednesdays. It is not about trash cans, Sharon. It is about theft. A neighbor came onto my property and stole a package from my porch. I have video evidence. Oh my, Sharon said. The cheerfulness faltered. Theft? That sounds like a police matter, Mr. Miller. The police have been notified, I said. But since this involves a resident violating the community code of conduct, specifically the part about maintaining a safe and lawful environment, I want the HOA to intervene. I want sanctions. I want a fine. I want a strongly worded letter. I see, Sharon said. She was typing loudly. And which neighbor is this regarding? I took a deep breath. Brenda Kowalski, 405 Maple Drive. The typing stopped abruptly. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. The kind of silence you hear in a horror movie right before the monster eats the person on the phone. Sharon? Mr. Miller, Sharon said, her voice suddenly devoid of all customer service warmth. Brenda Kowalski is the president of the board. I am aware, I said. That makes it worse, doesn't it? She's supposed to set an example. Mr. Miller, Sharon sighed. All formal grievances regarding code of conduct are reviewed by the Compliance Committee. Great. Put me through to them. The chairperson of the Compliance Committee, Sharon said slowly, is Brenda Kowalski. I stared at the phone. You have to be joking. And the appeals process, Sharon continued, is handled by the Board of Directors, which is chaired by Brenda, I finished. If you file a grievance, Sharon said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, she will be the one who opens the email. She will be the one who reviews the evidence, and she will be the one who decides the punishment. So, I said, feeling a vein throb in my temple. If I report Brenda for stealing my property, Brenda will investigate Brenda and find Brenda not guilty? Technically, Sharon said, she would have to recuse herself. But the vice president is Janice, and Janice and Brenda, well, they go on cruises together. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I just pressed the red button and let the phone drop onto the table. The system wasn't just broken. It was rigged. It was a closed loop of corruption wrapped in floral, print and baked ziti. Brenda wasn't just a thief. She was a warlord. She controlled the police through incompetence, the HOA through tyranny, and the neighborhood through fear. I drank my coffee. It tasted like battery acid. I needed to be sure. That was the thought that kept nagging me. Was this a one-time thing? Was the graphics card heist a crime of opportunity? Maybe she really did think it was lost. Maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe, just maybe, if I ordered another package, she would leave it alone. And if she didn't leave it alone, well, then I had my answer. Then I would know that we weren't dealing with a misunderstanding. We were dealing with a pathology. I opened the Amazon app. I needed bait. I didn't want to spend money, but I needed something that looked legitimate, a box that had heft, a box that screamed value. I found it. A 5-pound tub of Mass Monster Vanilla Protein Powder. It was on sale for $29.99. It was large. It was heavy. And if she stole it, the joke was on her, because the reviews said it tasted like chalk mixed with sadness. Order placed. Delivery estimate. Tomorrow by 2 p.m. The waiting game began. The next day, Wednesday, I took a half day. I told my boss I had a household emergency. He didn't ask questions. He probably assumed a pipe burst. He didn't know the emergency was a stakeout involving a tub of protein powder and a woman named Brenda. I set up my position in the guest bedroom again. I had my DSLR camera on the tripod. I had a bag of beef jerky. I had a cooler of Red Bull. I felt like a sniper, waiting for the target to cross the kill box. 1:45 p.m. The Amazon truck turned onto Maple Drive. My heart rate spiked. This was it, the scientific method in action. Hypothesis: Brenda is a kleptomaniac. Experiment: place object on porch. Observation: wait. The truck stopped. The driver, a different guy this time, younger, wearing headphones, hopped out. He grabbed the box. He jogged up my driveway. He dropped the box. Thump. He snapped the photo. He left. The truck drove away. The street was silent. I checked the time. 1:48 p.m. I watched Brenda's house through the telephoto lens. The curtains were still. The soft lamb's ear door was closed. Minutes ticked by. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Maybe she learned, I whispered to myself. Maybe the police visit scared her straight. I actually started to feel a little relief. If she didn't take it, then the world made sense again. The graphics card was a fluke. I could move on. I could forgive. Then, at the 15-minute mark, the garage door across the street began to rumble. It rose slowly, revealing a pristine, empty concrete floor. Brenda's beige Buick sedan was parked in the driveway, but the garage opened anyway. Brenda emerged from the inside of the garage. She was wearing gardening gloves and a wide-brimmed hat. She walked out to her mailbox. She opened it. She checked the mail. She looked up, looked directly at my porch. I held my breath. I was zoomed in so tight I could see the sweat on her upper lip. She stared at the box. I could practically see the gears turning in her head. She looked up and down the street. It was empty. The coast was clear. She didn't go for it immediately. She was smart. She pretended to weed a flower bed near the edge of her driveway. She pulled a dandelion. She dusted off her hands. She took a step toward the street. Then another. "Don't do it, Brenda," I muttered. "Don't do it. Be a person. Be a human being." She checked her watch. She looked at my house. My car was in the garage, strategic concealment. She thought I was at work. She broke into a trot. It was the same trot as before, the elbows pumping, the determination. She crossed the street in record time. She came up my driveway. I started snapping photos. Click whir, high-speed burst mode. I was getting everything. The approach, the reach, the grab. She snatched the box of protein powder. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look for a label. She grabbed it with the entitlement of a queen collecting taxes. And then, she did something that made my blood run cold. She looked directly at the Ring doorbell camera. She looked right into the lens, and she smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a smirk. A tight, thin-lipped smirk that said, "I know you're watching, and I know you can't do anything about it." She turned and walked away. I didn't run out there this time. I didn't scream. I didn't call Officer Miller. I just sat there, listening to the shutter of my camera firing like a machine gun, documenting the death of my pacifism. She took the protein powder into her house, the garage door lowered. She was a serial offender. She wasn't stealing because she needed things. She wasn't stealing because she was confused. She was stealing because she liked it. She was stealing because she felt invincible. She was stealing because, to her, my porch was just an extension of her kingdom. I sat back in my chair. The beef jerky tasted like ash. Okay, Brenda. You want the packages? You can have the packages." I closed the shutter on my camera. I picked up my phone. I deleted the draft email I had started writing to the HOA board. I deleted the non-emergency police number from my recents. I opened the browser tab I had left open the night before, the http www.google.com. Search. Live feeds. Wholesale crickets, mealworms, and dubia roaches. I stared at the Add to Cart button. But then a thought stopped me. If I just put crickets in a box, what happens? She opens it. They crawl out. She screams. She sweeps them up. She learns a lesson? Maybe. But crickets are passive. If I just dumped them in a box, half of them would be dead or asleep by the time she opened it. It would be a nuisance, not a catastrophe. I didn't want a nuisance. I wanted a catastrophe. I wanted a biblical event. I wanted propulsion. Needed them to fly. I grabbed a notebook. I started sketching. Concept 1. The springboard. I drew a box with a piece of cardboard bent over a spring. When the flap opens, the spring releases. Problem: if the spring is too strong, it kills the crickets. If it's too weak, they just sort of tumble out. Concept 2. The compressed air. A canister of CO2 triggered by the flap? Problem: loud. Would sound like a gunshot. Would definitely get me arrested for domestic terrorism. Concept 3. The spinner. A motor that spins a plate, flinging the bugs outward like a lawn fertilizer spreader. Problem: complexity. Power source. Batteries. I looked at my sketches. They looked like the ravings of a madman. I was a logistics manager, not an engineer. I knew how to move boxes, not how to weaponize them. I needed a professional. I needed someone who understood the dark arts of fabrication. Someone who wouldn't ask why I needed a mechanism capable of dispersing 10,000 insects at a 45-degree angle. I went to my computer. I avoided the usual places. Facebook Marketplace was too public. Craigslist was too sketchy. I didn't want to get murdered. I went to a local subreddit for makers and DIY. I scrolled past posts about people 3D printing Baby Yoda figurines and restoring antique lamps. Then I saw it. A post from a user named Scrap Heap King. Post title: offering custom fabrication, welding, electronics. I build BattleBots, drones, and props. If you can dream it, I can build it. If it explodes, that costs extra. There was a link to a YouTube channel. I clicked it. The video showed a bearded giant of a man standing in a garage that looked like it had survived a nuclear war. He was holding a lawnmower. "This," the man bellowed, "is the Decapitator 9000. He flipped a switch. The lawnmower didn't cut grass. It shot flames. I knew instantly that I had found my man. I sent him a private message. To Scrap Heap King. From Jack M. Subject: Special. Project High. I saw your post. I have a unique problem. I need a device disguised as an Amazon package. When opened, it needs to deploy a biological payload, live crickets, rapidly and aggressively. It needs to be reusable. It needs to be silent until activation. Are you interested? I hit send. I expected to wait a day, maybe 2. 30 seconds later, my inbox pinged. From Scrap Heap King to Jack M. Live crickets. You targeting a porch pirate? I typed back. Yes, my neighbor. She stole my GPU. The reply came instantly. I hate thieves. I'm in. My name is Dave. Come to the shop tomorrow morning. Bring cash and the crickets. I leaned back in my chair. A dark, satisfied smile spread across my face. The protein powder was a loss. The graphics card was a loss. But the war? The war was just beginning. I spent the rest of the afternoon sourcing the ammunition. I found a reptile supply store about an hour away that sold bulk feeder crickets by the thousand. How many do you need? The guy on the phone asked. He sounded like he was smoking a cigarette while talking. How many can fit in a cubic foot? I asked. A lot, man. Like 10,000? But they'll smell. The smell is a feature, not a bug, I said. Well, actually it is a bug. I'll take 10,000. You feeding a pterodactyl? Something like that. I hung up. I walked to the window one last time. Brenda was in her front yard again, watering her hydrangeas with one hand, holding my tub of protein powder in the other. She was shaking it, inspecting it. She looked confused. She probably thought it was flour. Enjoy it, Brenda. Enjoy the vanilla-flavored gains. Because the next delivery isn't coming from Amazon. It's coming from hell. And it's going to have a return address that you can't wipe off. I went to the garage and found a pristine, medium-sized Amazon box from a delivery of paper towels last month. I set it on my workbench. I patted the cardboard lid. Soon, I whispered. I went to bed early that night. I slept like a baby. The justice hangover was gone. It had been replaced by the clarifying, energizing focus of a man with a plan. Tomorrow, I would meet Heavy Metal Dave. Tomorrow, we would build the weapon. And God help the queen of the HOA. Thursday morning dawned with the kind of aggressive brightness that usually annoyed me, but today it felt like a spotlight on a stage. I had called in sick to work. My official excuse was digestive distress, which felt thematically appropriate, given that I was about to go purchase 10,000 insects. I grabbed the empty Amazon box, the chosen vessel, and tossed it into the passenger seat of my RAV4. I also grabbed a gym bag containing $500 in 20s. I didn't know what Dave charged for custom revenge engineering, but I figured cash was the universal language of people who built flame-throwing lawnmowers. The address Dave sent me was in an industrial park on the wrong side of the tracks, the kind of place where the potholes have their own zip codes and the businesses have names like Steel City Salvage and Bob's Radiator and Taxidermy. I found Unit 4B. The sign above the door just said heavy metal. The metal was written in a font that looked like it was dripping blood. I parked. I grabbed the box. I walked up to the roll-up garage door and knocked on the small pedestrian entrance. A moment later, the door swung open. If I had to describe Dave, I'd say imagine a Viking who got lost on his way to Valhalla and decided to open a welding shop in Ohio. He was at least 6'5". He had a beard that reached his chest, braided in 2 places with copper wire. He wore a leather apron covered in burn marks, and his arms were covered in tattoos of gears, pistons, and what appeared to be a robotic squid eating a submarine. "Jack?" he rumbled. His voice sounded like gravel tumbling inside a cement mixer. "That's me," I said, holding up the Amazon box, like an offering. Dave stepped aside. "Enter." I stepped into the shop. It was a cathedral of chaos. The air smelled of ozone, grinding dust, and old coffee. There were sparks showering down from a loft where an assistant was cutting steel. In the corner, a robot that looked like a jagged metal trash can was repeatedly ramming into a washing machine. "That's Sir Kills-a-Lot," Dave said, following my gaze. "Testing the impact sensors. He's a little sensitive today." "Right," I said. "Impressive." Dave cleared a space on a massive workbench covered in blueprints and half-eaten donuts. "Let's see the patient." I placed the cardboard box on the table. "Standard Amazon medium box, 12 by 10 by 8 inches. This is the camouflage." Dave nodded. He poked the cardboard with a finger the size of a sausage. "Structural integrity is garbage. If we load a mechanism in here, the sides will bow. She'll know it's fake." "Can we reinforce it?" "We line the interior with what 1/8 inch Luan. Plywood," Dave said, his eyes narrowing as he entered design mode. "Rigid, lightweight. We glue it flush to the walls. From the outside, it still feels like cardboard, but it won't flex." He grabbed a marker and started drawing directly on the workbench. "So," Dave said, "the payload, 10,000 crickets. That's about, what, 3 pounds of biomass? Give or take, plus the weight of the mechanism." "We need dispersion," Dave said. "If we just use a spring-loaded floor, the crickets at the bottom will get crushed by the G-force, and the ones at the top will just sort of flop out. You don't want a flop. You want a cloud." "Exactly," I said. "I want them airborne. I want them in her hair." Dave drew a circle. "We use a centrifugal spinner. Think of a salad spinner from hell." I frowned. "A spinner?" "Yeah. We build a false floor. Underneath, a high-torque brushless motor. On top of the motor, a shallow dish with vanes. The crickets sit in the dish. When the flap opens, the motor spins up instantly to 3,000 RPM. The centrifugal force flings the crickets outward and upward against the angled walls of the box liner." He made an exploding motion with his hands. "It creates a vortex. They don't just jump out. They are ejected in a 360-degree spray." I stared at the drawing. It was beautiful. It was psychotic. "Dave, that's brilliant. But the noise? A motor spinning at 3,000 RPM is going to whine." "Not if we use a high-quality drone motor," Dave said, "and we dampen the mount with silicone. But the spin-up time, that's the issue. It takes a second. She might see it." He erased the circle. "No, You're right. Too complex. Batteries could fail. Let's go analog. Let's go kinetic. He drew a new diagram. The dual-flap catapult, he announced. I'm listening. We divide the interior into two halves, two spring-loaded scoops, like clamshells. They are held down by a tension pin connected to the top flaps of the box. The moment she cuts the tape and pulls the flaps back, twang! He slammed his hand on the table. Both scoops deploy upwards and outwards. It throws the payload in two distinct arcs, aiming for the face and chest. It's instantaneous. No batteries to die, no motor whine, just pure, stored mechanical energy. And the crickets won't get crushed? Not if the scoops are lined with soft foam, Dave said. It cushions the launch. They'll be disoriented, angry, and flying at roughly 15 feet per second. I smiled. I love it. Now, Dave said, crossing his massive arms. The trigger. This is the hard part. Porch pirates are fast. They cut, they grab. If the trigger is too sensitive, it goes off in your car. If it's too stiff, she sees it before it fires. She uses scissors, I said. I watched her. She slices the tape, then pulls the flaps. Perfect, Dave said. We use a dead man's switch-style pin. We'll attach a thin, invisible fishing line to the underside of the box flaps. The line connects to the retention pin holding the springs down. As she lifts the flap past 45 degrees, the point of no return, the line pulls the pin. Boom, I whispered. Boom, Dave agreed. I can have the frame welded and the springs calibrated by tomorrow afternoon. It'll cost you $300 for parts and labor. I reached into my bag and pulled out the cash. Make it $400. But I want the springs to be strong. I want maximum range. Dave took the money and grinned. It was a terrifying sight. Brother, I'm going to use springs from a garage door. She's going to be finding crickets in her attic. I left Dave's shop feeling lighter than I had in days. The mechanism was in production. Now I needed the ammo. The reptile supply store was called Cold-Blooded Critters. It was located in a strip mall between a vape shop and a struggling karate dojo. I walked in, and the smell hit me instantly. It was a thick, musky scent of sawdust, heat lamps, and things that scuttle in the dark. The guy at the counter was named Tyler. I knew this because his name tag said Tyler, and he looked exactly like a Tyler. He had stretched earlobes, a lip ring, and looked like he hadn't slept since 2019. Help you? Tyler mumbled, not looking up from his phone. I called yesterday, I said, about the bulk crickets. Tyler looked up. His eyes widened slightly. Oh, the pterodactyl guy. That's me. Right. Let me check the back. I think the shipment came in. He disappeared behind a curtain of bead. I waited. I looked at a tank containing a bearded dragon that looked at me with deep, judgmental eyes. You're a monster, the lizard seemed to say. Those crickets have families. Shut up, lizard, I thought. They are soldiers now. Tyler returned carrying 2 large mesh sacks. They were writhing. The sound was incredible. A constant high-pitched shh, chirp, shh. It sounded like static electricity given life. 10,000 Acada domesticus, Tyler said, dropping the sacks on the counter. Standard size. They're hungry, so they're active. Perfect, I said. You need gut load? He asked. Gut load? Nutrient gel, to feed them. If you don't feed them, they start eating each other. Cannibalism kicks in after about 24 hours. I stared at the sacks. The idea of cannibalistic crickets was horrifying, but also potentially useful. No, I needed them alive for the launch. Give me the gel, I said. And you said you wanted superworms? Yes, for texture. He reached under the counter and pulled out a plastic tub. Inside, hundreds of segmented orange-brown worms squirmed over each other. They were thick, meaty. These bite, Tyler warned, just so you know. They bite? Yeah, little pinchers. Not dangerous, but annoying. I looked at the tub. I imagined Brenda trying to brush biting worms off her floral blouse. I'll take 2 tubs, I said. I paid for the biological warfare agents and carried them out to my car. I put them in the trunk. The sound of chirping filled the RAV4. I had to turn the radio up to volume 20 just to drown it out. On the drive home, I started to feel a twinge of, not guilt exactly, but nerves. This was escalating. This was moving from prank to psychological trauma. I thought about Brenda. I thought about the way she smirked at the camera. I thought about the soft lamb's ear door closing in my face. I thought about the police officer shrugging. The nerves vanished. When I got home, I hid the crickets in the garage. I put a space heater near them because Tyler said they liked warmth. I fed them the blue nutrient gel. They swarmed it. It was fascinating and repulsive. I went inside and checked the camera history. Brenda had been active. At 3:00 p.m., she had walked out to check her mail. She had looked at my porch. She had lingered. She was hunting. She was checking to see if I had replaced the protein powder. She was insatiable. Friday, the build day. I picked up the mechanism from Dave at noon. It was a work of art. He had built a lightweight aluminum frame that fit perfectly inside the Amazon box. The 2 scoops were made of thin plastic, hinged at the bottom. The springs were terrifying coils of steel that looked like they belonged on a suspension bridge, not a cardboard box. I calibrated it, Dave said, showing me the trigger. Look here. He pointed to a tiny, hair-thin wire. This is the safety pin. You pull this ring here. He pointed to a small metal loop on the side. And the system is armed. Once armed, the flaps are held down by this catch. The fishing line goes here. You tape the fishing line to the underside of the cardboard flap. When she lifts the flap, it pulls the catch. Snap! Dave triggered it with his thumb. The scoops fired upward so fast my eye couldn't track them. A blast of air hit my face. Whoa, I said, stumbling back. That generates about 4 Gs of force, Dave said proudly. Whatever is in there is going to the moon. It's perfect, Dave. You're a genius. I know. Don't blow your hand off. I took the device home. It was time for final assembly. I cleared off my kitchen table. Sarah was still at work, thank God. I didn't think she would appreciate the cricket cannon being assembled on the place where we ate breakfast. Step 1. The reinforcement. I glued the thin plywood panels Dave had given me to the inside walls of the Amazon box. I used high-strength spray adhesive. I clamped them until they were dry. Now the box was rigid. You could squeeze it, and it wouldn't crush. It felt solid. Premium. Step 2. The installation. I lowered Dave's aluminum frame into the box. It was a snug fit. I used hot glue to secure the base to the bottom of the box so it wouldn't rattle. I added the lead weights Dave suggested, fishing sinkers wrapped in duct tape, to bring the total weight up to about 5 pounds. It felt substantial, like a graphics card. Step 3. The loading. This was the nightmare phase. I took the box to the garage. I put on a pair of latex gloves and a face mask. I placed the box inside a larger plastic storage bin, just in case of spills. I opened the cricket sacks. Getting 10,000 crickets from a mesh bag into 2 spring-loaded plastic scoops is not a precise science. It is a panic-inducing scramble. I poured them. They jumped. They crawled up my arms. They got in my hair. "Stay down! Stay down!" I hissed, swatting them back into the scoops. I managed to get about 90% of them into the launch bay. The other 10% were now permanent residents of my garage. I added the superworms on top. They were the heavy artillery. They wriggled into the mass of crickets, creating a dense, squirming layer of biomass. Step 4. The arming. I carefully compressed the scoops. The springs groaned. The crickets chirped frantically, protesting the compression. I pushed the scoops down until they locked into the catch. Click. The payload was secured. The potential energy was contained. Now, the delicate part. I took the fishing line triggers and taped them to the underside of the box's top flaps. I had to be incredibly gentle. If I pulled too hard, the box would detonate in my face, and I would be the one covered in worms. I sweat. My hands shook. But I got the tape secured. I closed the flaps. I sealed the top with the branded Amazon Prime tape. I stepped back. It sat on my workbench. It looked completely innocent. A brown cardboard box, 12 by 10/8, a shipping label on the side addressed to me. But inside? Inside was a compressed, chaotic event waiting for a catalyst. I printed a new label. I wanted to make sure she took it. I wanted to target her greed specifically. From Tiffany & Co. To J. Miller. Contents: fragile, glassware. No. Too obvious. Brenda wasn't looking for jewelry. She was looking for electronics. She wanted things she could sell or use. I went back to the original plan. From Apple Inc. To J. Miller. Urgent delivery. Simple. Clean. The Apple logo triggers a primal response in suburban thieves. It means money. It means iPads. It means happiness. I slapped the label on. I looked at the clock. It was 4:00 p.m. Brenda would be home. But the lighting was wrong. I wanted high noon. I wanted the sun to be shining so the video quality would be crisp. Saturday. Tomorrow. The Sabbath. I would rest tonight. But the box was ready. I went inside and showered. I scrubbed my arms twice, feeling phantom cricket legs crawling on me. When Sarah got home, she saw the box sitting on the counter. I had moved it inside. "Is that a package?" she asked, reaching for it. "Don't touch it!" I screamed, diving across the kitchen. She froze, hand hovering an inch from the tape. "Whoa! Jack, what is wrong with you?" "That," I gasped, out of breath, "is the bait. It's armed. If you open that, we have to move. We will have to burn the house down." Sarah looked at the box. She looked at me. She saw the manic glint in my eye. "Is this the cricket thing?" she asked. "Yes." "How many are in there?" "All of them." "All of them?" 10,000. Sarah slowly backed away. "I'm going to my mother's for the weekend." "That's probably for the best," I said. She grabbed her keys. "You need therapy, Jack." "I don't need therapy," I said, looking at the box. "I need justice." She left. I was alone with the weapon. I spent the evening testing my camera angles. I set up the command center in the guest room again. I cleaned the lenses. I checked the memory cards. I made sure the batteries were charged. I had the ring cam. I had the GoPro in the planter, hidden under mulch. I had the DSLR with the telephoto lens. And as a backup, I taped an old iPhone to the inside of my front window, recording in slow-mo. I wanted the money shot. I wanted the frame-by-frame breakdown of the moment regret entered her soul. I went to sleep, but I dreamed of chirping. A deafening, rhythmic chirping that grew louder and louder until it swallowed the world. Friday night was the longest night of my life. You would think that with the house to myself, my wife safely exiled to her mother's, and a fridge full of bachelor-grade groceries, I would be relaxing. I should have been playing video games. I should have been watching movies with explosions in them. Instead, I was babysitting a cardboard box that sounded like a dying radiator. It started around 9:00 p.m. I was sitting in the living room, trying to read a book on supply chain management to calm my nerves, when I heard it. Thrum. It wasn't a chirp. It wasn't the distinct, pastoral sound of a single cricket calling out to a mate in the moonlight. This was a collective, low-frequency vibration. It was the sound of 10,000 exoskeleton legs rubbing together in a confined space. It was the sound of a hive mind. I lowered the book, looked at the kitchen counter where the box sat. Thrum, hiss, click, thrum. No, I whispered. I walked over to the box. Up close, it was louder. It sounded like static electricity. It sounded like a Geiger counter in a uranium mine. If I could hear it from the living room, Brenda would definitely hear it when she picked it up. If Brenda heard a package hissing at her, she wouldn't open it inside her house. She would leave it on the porch. Or worse, she would call the bomb squad. And explaining to the FBI why I built a cricket-based IED was not on my bucket list. I needed soundproofing. Fast. I couldn't open the box. It was sealed. It was armed. If I cut the tape now, the fishing line triggers would pull the pins, and I would be the victim of my own revenge. I would be patient zero in the cricket apocalypse. I grabbed the box gently. It felt warm. The biological heat generated by that many insects was actually warming the cardboard. That was another problem. If she touched it, and it was 90 degrees, she'd know something was up. Think, Jack. Think. I carried the box to the garage. I placed it on the workbench. I needed an external layer. A layer that dampened sound, but didn't look suspicious. I looked around my garage. I saw a roll of bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is good. Amazon uses bubble wrap. But bubble wrap is translucent. I saw a stack of old towels. No. Then I saw it. The styrofoam cooler from a frozen steak delivery I'd received last month. It was white, thick, and dense. If I put the Amazon box inside another box, it would look like a double-boxed shipment. High-value electronics often come double-boxed. It adds legitimacy. I found a larger cardboard box, a large Amazon box. I cut the styrofoam cooler into panels. I lined the walls of the large box with the styrofoam. I placed the weaponized box inside the styrofoam nest. I leaned in. The sound was muffled. It was now a faint hum, barely audible unless you pressed your ear against it. But now I had a new problem. The inner box, the one with the spring-loaded scoops, was the one that needed to explode. If I put it inside a second box, Brenda would have to open 2 boxes. Would she open the second box immediately? Or would she open the outer box, see the inner box, and wait? I needed the trigger to be on the inner box, but I needed her to access it seamlessly. I decided to gamble. I would leave the outer box unsealed, or just lightly taped with clear tape so it looked like the outer shipping shell. The inner box, the apple box, would be the prize. I packed the gaps with packing peanuts. Now, if she shook it, she wouldn't feel the shifting weight of the mechanism. She would just feel the soft, reassuring thud of peanuts. I stepped back. The hum was gone. The heat was contained. But then the smell hit me. It was subtle at first, but unmistakable. It smelled like a pet store dumpster. It smelled like earthy musk and ammonia. The crickets were stressed. Stressed crickets stink. "You have got to be kidding me," I groaned. If the box smelled like a zoo, she wouldn't take it. I ran upstairs to the bathroom. I raided my cologne cabinet. I found a bottle of cool water that I hadn't worn since 2008. It smelled like a mall kiosk and desperation. I sprayed the exterior of the cardboard. Pfft, pfft. I sniffed. Now it smelled like a muskrat that had just showered at the YMCA. Better, I decided. It smells like industrial cleaner or the driver's cologne. I went to bed at 2 a.m. I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to the silence, knowing that inside that silence was a biological time bomb waiting for dawn. Saturday morning. The setup. The sun rose at 6:30 a.m. It was a perfect day for revenge. Clear skies, light breeze, temperature expected to hit 75. Prime porch-sitting weather for Brenda. I drank 3 cups of coffee. I was vibrating. My hands had a slight tremor, which was bad because I still had to pull the safety pin. I went to the garage. I checked the box. The smell had dissipated slightly, or maybe I had just gone nose-blind. The sound was undetectable thanks to the styrofoam sarcophagus. I checked my cameras. The Ring doorbell was online. The GoPro in the planter was recording to an SD card. I had to go out and manually turn it on. The DSLR in the guest room was set up with a fresh battery and an empty 128 GB card. I needed to do a dry run, not with the box, but with the timing. I walked out the front door at 8 a.m. I carried a bag of trash to the curb. I looked at Brenda's house. Her car was there. The curtains were drawn, but the blue flicker of a TV was visible. She was awake. She was home. I walked back to the house. I made a show of looking at my watch. I paced on the porch. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to know I was active. 8:30 a.m. I saw the blinds move across the street. She was watching. Perfect. Now, the hard part. I couldn't just leave the box and drive away. If I did that, and she didn't take it immediately, the crickets might die from the heat, or the smell might get worse. I needed a tight window of execution. I decided on a delivery simulation. I had an old high-visibility vest from a construction job I did one summer. I put it on over a generic gray t-shirt. I put on a baseball cap. I wasn't trying to fool her into thinking I was a UPS driver. She knew what I looked like. I was trying to fool the narrative. If she saw a guy in a vest drop a box, her brain would register delivery, not Jack setting a trap. I backed my car out of the garage. I drove around the block. I parked 3 streets over. I opened the trunk. I took the box out. It was heavy. The lead weights made it feel like serious hardware. I walked back toward my house. I took the alleyway so I would approach from the opposite direction of my driveway, walking up the sidewalk like a courier on foot. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. I reached my house. I walked up the driveway. I tried to look bored, professional. I stepped onto the porch. I set the box down on the welcome mat. Now, the safety pin. This was the moment. The box was currently safe. The internal springs were held by a metal pin protruding from the side of the inner box, accessible through a small slit I cut in the outer box. Once I pulled that pin, the only thing holding back the explosion was the fishing line taped to the flaps. If the tape failed, boom. If I bumped it too hard, boom. I knelt down. I pretended to scan a barcode on the label with my phone. My finger hooked the metal ring of the safety pin. "Steady," I whispered. I took a breath. I pulled. Click. The pin slid out smoothly. It was a 3-inch piece of steel. I palmed it and shoved it in my pocket. The weapon was live. I stood up. I didn't breathe. I stepped back carefully, treating the box like it contained nitroglycerin. I turned around, walked down the driveway. I didn't look at Brenda's house. I kept my eyes forward. I tapped my phone like I was marking the delivery as complete. I turned the corner and sprinted to my car. I tore the vest off. I threw the hat in the back seat. I drove the car to the local park, left it there, and jogged back to my house through the woods behind our subdivision. I entered through the back gate. I slipped in the sliding glass door. I was in. The trap was set. I ran upstairs to the command center. I checked the monitors. The box sat there. An ominous cube of cardboard. I checked the time. 9:15 a.m. Now, we wait. The agony of the wait. Waiting for a thief is a lot like fishing, if fishing involved high blood pressure and a desire to see the fish emotionally destroyed. 9:30 a.m. Nothing. 9:45 a.m. Nothing. "Come on, Brenda," I muttered at the screen. "You want it. It's an Apple product. It's shiny. It's expensive." 10 a.m. A car drove down the street. It slowed down. My heart jumped. Was it an accomplice? No, just a lost Uber Eats driver looking for house numbers. He paused in front of my house. He looked at the box. "Don't you do it," I hissed. "Don't you be a hero, buddy. That tip isn't worth it." He drove on. I exhaled. 10:15 a.m. Movement across the street. The soft lamb's ear door opened. Brenda emerged. She was wearing a purple tracksuit today. Velour. It caught the morning sun in a way that was offensive to the laws of optics. She had her coffee mug. She had her visor. She walked to the edge of her porch. She stretched, doing a vague side bend that accomplished nothing. She looked at the street. She looked at the sky. She looked at my porch. She froze. I saw it happen in real time on the 4K monitor. Her head snapped to the box. She stared at it. She took a sip of coffee, but she didn't swallow immediately. She was processing. "Is Jack home?" "No, his car is gone." It was at the park. "Is anyone else around?" "No." "What is that? Box? It's double-boxed. It looks big." She took a step down her stairs. "Yes," I whispered. "Come to the flame, moth." She walked down her driveway. She was casual about it. She stopped to pick up a piece of invisible litter on her lawn. She was building her cover story, just tidying up the neighborhood. She reached the sidewalk. She looked left. She looked right. She began the crossing. I switched to the DSLR viewfinder. I had her in crisp focus. I could see the wrinkles around her eyes. I could see the greed. She reached my driveway. She started walking up. And then, disaster struck. A bicycle bell rang out. Ding, ding. Brenda froze mid-step. She spun around. Coming down the sidewalk was Timmy, the neighborhood paper boy. Well, he didn't deliver papers. Nobody reads papers. But he delivered the weekly community flyer. He was 12, riding a mountain bike that was too big for him. "Hi, Mrs. Kowalski," Timmy yelled, waving. Brenda's face went through a complex series. of contortions. She went from stealth mode to gracious neighbor in 0.5 seconds. "Hello, Timothy," she called back, her voice shrill and fake. "Lovely day for a ride?" "Yeah," Timmy yelled. He rode past my house. He looked at Brenda standing in my driveway. "What you doing?" My heart stopped. If Timmy spooked her, she would abort. If she aborted, the crickets would die. The plan would fail. Brenda didn't miss a beat. "Just checking Jack's mail. He's out of town. Asked me to keep an eye on things." "Okay, bye." Timmy pedaled away, oblivious to the felony in progress. Brenda watched him go. She waited until he turned the corner at the end of the block. She turned back to the house. The interruption hadn't deterred her. It had emboldened her. She had her excuse now. She had told a witness she was checking on things. Now she had to take it. She marched up the steps. She stood over the box. The Ring camera captured her face from 3 feet away. She was breathing, heavily. Not from exertion, but from excitement. She bent down. She reached for the box. "Don't shake it," I prayed. "Please, for the love of physics, don't shake it hard." She grabbed the sides. She lifted it. She grunted. "Oof!" It was heavy. The lead weights were doing their job. She smiled. A genuine ear-to-ear smile. She thought she had struck gold. She tucked it under her arm. Because it was a double box, it was bulky. She had to use 2 hands to hold it against her chest. She turned around. She scanned the street one last time. She began the walk back. I was shaking. My hands were trembling so hard I almost knocked the tripod over. I switched back to the telephoto lens aimed at her living room window. "Bring it home, Brenda," I whispered. "Take it to the nest." She crossed the street. She walked up her driveway. She fumbled with her keys, balancing the box on her knee. She unlocked the door. She stepped inside. The door closed. I let out a breath I had been holding for 20 minutes. I waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Why wasn't she opening it? Was she suspicious? Was she making a sandwich? I stared at the window. The curtains were shears. I could see silhouettes. I saw her put the box on the coffee table. I saw her walk to the kitchen. She came back. She was holding something shiny. Scissors or a knife. She sat down on the sofa. She adjusted her glasses. She was reading the label. Apple ink. I saw her head tilt back. She laughed. She actually laughed. She was celebrating. She thought she had just scored a MacBook or an iMac. She leaned forward. She brought the scissors down. "Here we go," I said, my finger pressing the record button on the DSLR. 3, 2, 1. I saw her sawing at the tape on the outer box. She opened the outer flaps. She reached in. She pulled out the inner box. The rigged box. She set the outer box aside. She looked at the inner box. This was it. The trigger was primed. The fishing line was taut. She inserted the scissors into the tape of the inner box. Snip. She put the scissors down. She placed her hands on the 2 main flaps. I leaned closer to the monitor, my nose almost touching the screen. "Pull it," I commanded. "Pull the lever, Crunk." She lifted the flaps. The fishing line tightened. The catch released. Boom! It wasn't a sound I heard. It was a motion I saw. 1 millisecond, Brenda was sitting on her couch. The next millisecond, a brown blur exploded upward from the box. It was like a confetti cannon. if confetti was made of nightmares. The scoops deployed with such violence that the box itself actually jumped off the table. The payload, 10,000 crickets and 500 superworms, hit the ceiling fan. The fan was on. Thwack, 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 thwack. The fan blades acted as a secondary dispersion system. It turned the column of insects into a localized rainstorm. Crickets were flung into the curtains, into the kitchen, into the high-pile sun carpet. And most importantly, onto Brenda. She disappeared for a second under a cloud of brown specks. Then she stood up. I couldn't hear the scream through the window, but I saw it. Her mouth opened so wide I thought she was going to unhinge her jaw. Her head went back. Her arms started flailing. She was doing the dance, the panicked, primal dance of a human being realizing they are no longer at the top of the food chain. She slapped her face. She slapped her arms. She started jumping up and down. She ran toward the window. I saw a superworm stuck to her purple velour tracksuit. It was clinging on for dear life. She ran away from the window, tripping over the coffee table. She went down hard. She crawled. She was crawling on the floor, but the floor was moving. The crickets were everywhere. They were hopping. They were swarming. She scrambled up and ran for the front door. I grabbed my coffee mug. I walked calmly out onto my front porch. I stood there, leaning against the railing, looking casual. The soft lamb's ear door burst open. Brenda exploded onto her front porch. She was screaming sounds that I didn't think human vocal cords could produce. It was a mixture of a siren and a dying seal. "Get them off! Get them off!" She was ripping at her clothes. She pulled her tracksuit jacket off and threw it on the lawn. She was swatting at her hair. "Help!" she shrieked. "Help me!" I took a sip of coffee. "Morning, Brenda," I called out. "Everything okay?" She froze. She looked at me. Her hair was a mess. There was a cricket perched on her nose. "You!" she screamed, pointing a shaking finger. "You did this!" "Did what?" I asked innocently. "The bugs! The box! It exploded!" "Oh no," I said, putting a hand to my chest. "Did you open a package that wasn't addressed to you, Brenda?" "It was a bomb!" she wailed. "A bug bomb!" "It was a delivery," I corrected. "For my lizard farm. I've been meaning to start a lizard farm. Did you intercept my livestock?" "I'm calling the police!" she screamed. She reached into her pocket for her phone, but pulled out a handful of crickets instead. She threw them on the ground and stomped on them. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," I said, smiling. "I'm sure Officer Miller would love to hear how you accidentally stole a decoy box and opened it in your living room." She stared at me. The realization hit her. The trap. The bait. The camera. She looked at her house. The door was open. I could hear the chirping from here. It was a dull roar. "My house," she whimpered. "My beautiful house." "I hear crickets are good luck," I said. "In some cultures." She let out one final, incoherent shriek and ran to her car. She dove in, slammed the door, and locked it. She sat there, sobbing, while a few stray crickets hopped across her windshield. I went back inside. I saved the video footage. I backed it up to 3 different hard drives. I called Sarah. "It's done," I said. "Is she dead?" Sarah asked. "No. But her dignity is." "And the crickets?" "Everywhere," I said. It was glorious. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The police did come, eventually, but it wasn't the raid Brenda expected. Officer Miller showed up about an hour later. Brenda was still in her car. I was on my porch, sweeping up some leaves and hiding my smile. Miller talked to Brenda. He looked at the box on her living room floor. He saw the crickets covering her walls, her furniture, her precious decorative plates. He came over to me. He was biting his lip so hard I thought it would bleed. "Jack," he said. "Officer. She says you attacked her with a biological weapon." "I sent a package to myself," I said. "It contained live bait for fishing. And lizards. I have a lot of hobbies." "And the mechanism?" "To keep them fresh," I lied. "Air circulation." Miller looked at me. He looked at the chaos across the street. "You know," he said, "technically if someone steals a package, they assume the risk of the contents, unless the contents are illegal. Crickets aren't illegal." "Exactly," I said. "However," Miller said, his voice low, "if you ever do this again, I'm going to have to arrest you for something. Disturbing the peace, or being a smartass." "Understood," I said. "I think the porch piracy problem is solved, officer." "I think so too," Miller said. "She's calling a hotel. And an exterminator. She says she can't go back in there." "Shame," I said. "It's a nice house." Brenda spent a week at the Holiday Inn. The exterminator tented her house. It cost her thousands. When she came back, she didn't look at me. She didn't look at my house. She walked from her car to her door with her head down. And the best part, a week later, I ordered the replacement graphics card. Kevin, the driver, dropped it off. He left it on the mat. It sat there for 4 hours while I was at work. I watched the camera. Brenda came out. She saw the box. She recoiled. She actually jumped back like the box was going to bite her. She ran back inside her house. I came home. I picked up my graphics card. I waved at her window. The curtains didn't move. The war was over. And the crickets? Well, on quiet nights, you can still hear them in her walls. A gentle, rhythmic reminder. Don't touch my stuff.